Hey guys, welcome to EuroLeague Fantasy Talks. In this episode, we will talk about BasketNews EuroLeague Fantasy and our preparation for round 16, with the most focus on budget growing at the end, but also now I'm picking players that are not necessarily growing your budget. And this is how my team did in round 15. In the last round, I got 242 fantasy points, finished at 63rd position among all the BasketNews fantasy players, and got 670k to the budget. So the team did rather well. Center position could have been better, but actually I did good trades between day 1 and day 2. So this is how much these guys got me to the budget. The Joneses from Partizan, Tariq and Karlik gave me the most with 200 and 290k. Meritage and Shorts did alright. Maledon got also a nice amount. Milutinov and Moneke and Edwards reduced the budget, but that's expected at this point. If I'm picking the best players, we will reach their maximum cap basically, where we cannot grow in price, and just a small worse performance, and of course we will drop their price. So it's inevitable, but we have a quite big budget at the moment, so that's alright. And let's go and check how much fantasy points my players need to score in round 16 not to drop their price. And these are the numbers. Milutinov needs 35, Carson Edwards 30, so those are big numbers, and most likely we will drop their price again. Both Joneses have really good numbers. Even with -3 fantasy points, they would not drop their budget, so we will definitely keep them. Moneke and Horde have alright numbers. We shouldn't drop their price. Everyone else have around 16, 17, 19, and 20. These are high PAR average players, so we should reach their numbers and not drop in price. But it also depends which trades I will gonna make. So let's go and see what we are trading out. Since Carson Edwards needs to score 30 fantasy points not to drop in price, and since he will be playing against Monaco defense, I will not gonna risk him, and I am trading him out. There are better options in the market, and actually I will also focus again to have more players playing on December 18, because most of my players are playing on Tuesday. I will get 3 players that are playing on Wednesday. It's 2 games. Olympiacos are hosting Virtus, and Efes is playing against Crvena Zvezda. I will also sell Jalen Horde from Maccabi. He's actually a good pick, and I would like to keep him, but I really want to have players on Wednesday. And as much as I would like to keep Moneke because the matchup is really good, he's playing against Maccabi's defense, but really need players for the second day, and I'm sorted with a bunch of other great players for Tuesday, so I will sell Moneke. Alright, so the strategy here is to have great players, also who to captain on Wednesday if my captain on Tuesday doesn't perform so well. So of course I have to take Vezenkov. Vezenkov is playing on Wednesday against Virtus, and Virtus, even with Duško Ivanović, they're still not so good in defense, and Vezenkov is playing at home. He's probably the most stable guy out there, so of course we pick him and we have him for Wednesday. And Vezenkov needs to score 27.1 fantasy points not to drop his price, so that's a bit risky. Probably he will drop a price if I'm guessing, because it's not so easy to score 27 fantasy points, right? Really, I'm picking him for fantasy points, and I do recommend for you guys to do the same. And for my second forward, I will pick Will Clyburn from Virtus. Clyburn will play against Vezenkov, so that's of course not ideal, but there's only so little games on Wednesday, and he's now becoming leader of his team. New coach Duško Ivanović is giving him even more minutes, so I'm picking Clyburn just in case to have him on Wednesday, because also Olympiacos recently are also not shining so much on defense. So Clyburn is a little bit of a risky pick, but he needs to score -12 fantasy points. Even with -12, he actually would not drop his price, so actually that's a great pick for budget growing. And for my guard, I will pick Darius Thompson from Efes. Thompson is also playing on Wednesday, so that's the reason we pick him. But also he's one of the best players for price growing, because even with -20 fantasy points, he would still not drop his price, which basically means whatever amount he scores around even 0 fantasy points, assuming he plays at least 1 second, of course, then his price will grow. And Efes are playing at home, where Crvena Zvezda are not so great in defense when playing in away games, and obviously Thompson is much better when playing at home. So even if Larkin back, he's doing great. So I think it's really good bargain for guard position. So that's great. We have 6 players playing on Tuesday and 4 players playing on Wednesday. And since Partizan have a lot of injuries, and because of Maledon is so important to his team, so I will captain Maledon, but I was choosing between Karlik, Jones and Shorts as well. Otherwise we always have a backup Vezenkov for Wednesday. So this will be my team for round 16, and let's now go check players and their stats for price growing. We will start with top 10 players by fantasy points average, so basically to see the best players, how much they need to score in the next round not to drop their price. So here we have top 10 centers by fantasy points average. This is not their fantasy points average, but amount of fantasy points that we need to score in round 16 not to drop their price, which means if Lesor would score below 19 fantasy points, he would drop his price, his value would be reduced, and so your overall budget. But for example, if you pick Bolombo and he plays and scores more than 2 fantasy points, his price should grow, and then you can sell him for more money and increase your budget over time. If you keep buying players cheaper and growing their price. So the good picks here are Bolombo needs 1.5, Vesely only 9.2 not to drop his price, Donta Hall 0.9. Saka finally got better stats, and even if minus 3.8 fantasy points he would not drop his price. Oturu 9.8 and Poirier 24, so Poirier is not a guaranteed price growth, actually maybe the opposite. Because that's quite a bunch of fantasy points needed not to drop his price. So let's go to the forward section. Mirotic, Vezenkov, they are the top 3 fantasy points average guys here. But for price growing, Tyreek Jones and Clyburn have the best stats. That's why we have them. Stikerskis is also decent. Moneke 8.8 is also good to keep. His Davis is good for fantasy points, I think, but not so good for price growing. Lide is actually decent with 16.4. And forward section, Shorts, Maldon, Campazzo are the 3 best ones. Carlick, Jones, and Edwards are following up. Carlick has the best stats. Punter is okay with 1.1 fantasy points. And Larkin now needs to score 12.6 not to drop in price. So it really depends on Larkin's performance, how much he will grow in price. Carson Edwards and Okobo most probably will drop their price because also Kalatas might be back. And he might get limited minutes, Okobo, because of the double week. If Kendrick Nunn will play, he needs to score 21.8 not to drop his price. And let's now go check players that have the best stats for price growing in next round. Among centers, McCormack, Oturu, and Osmani have the best stats. We need to score minus 26, minus 10, and minus 7, respectively, not to drop their prices. Diouf, Saka are also alright. Cambridge and Donta Hall, we need to score more than 0 fantasy points not to drop their price. And Bolombo is also very decent. In forwards, Mitrovic needs to score minus 26. So actually that's very good stats, but let's see how much he will play now. Utah Brown is doing good, and actually minus 16 would not drop his price. Manek, Davidovats, Anderson, Terpey are among other players that are good to pick for price going. Also Rogovopoulos, and let's check now the guards. And the best guards for price going, as I said, is Darius Thompson. Then Matisek, if you trust him, that he scores more than minus 10 fantasy points, then he will not drop his price. Sterling Brown should do very well, and he will actually grow in price even with minus 6. Marcus Howard with minus 5, Hollatz with 0.4, and the Bartolomeo with 0.6 are also considerable picks. That's all, guys. For more content on EuroLeague Fantasy, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Thank you for watching, and see you on the next one.